Hello, and welcome to the Apple Insider Podcast. I'm your host, Wes Hilliard, and I'm joined by William Gallagher. Today's show is brought to you by Notion and Fastmail. If you're an Apple Insider Plus subscriber, you'll get an ad-free show and an additional segment at the end. This week, our topic will be sharing our WWDC wish list. That's going to be separate from the conversation we're going to have today about the news and expected announcements. It's going to be what William and I actually want to happen or hope to happen from this event. So, William, are you excited for Monday?
I actually am. I mean, I always am. I look forward to WWDC, but this time, normally, I almost avoid all the rumours because I like to enjoy the show and leave there. But this time, I love that you're suggesting this for the Apple Insider Plus thing because I have desires. I don't know that they'll be satisfied in this WWDC, but I have them. And we can talk them out, and then Apple will listen, and they've got until Monday to put them in. It'll work.
So you think they'll reveal the Apple car? Is that what you're saying? In blue?
In blue is what I was holding out for, yes. And arguably a better blue than the iPad Air, because in our Apple Insider review, apparently blue looks a bit silver-like. So I think that's why they've delayed the colour. They've got to practice getting the colour. It's important.
Yeah, I think...
you just don't agree with me there, okay.
like we said, we're going to get into it in just a second, but we're going to lack some hardware this year. Apple's obviously clearing the table to make sure there's nothing in the way of their announcements, because even the device awards were announced as we record Thursday morning. So, there's just... Apple really wants to focus on the software this year. Mark Gurman already let us know, hey, no... M3 Ultra, no Mac Studio, no Mac Pro at this event, which honestly probably means no M3 Ultra period, but we'll see about that as we get closer to July, because they've done that before and slipped it into a summer net press release, so who knows. But at the very least, this is going to be a very packed WWDC. We don't need more things to add to it. Last year was taken over by Vision Pro. This year, we'll see what AI brings to the table. But before we get to all that, I just wanted to plug... I was on the iPads Pro podcast. I know I've mentioned it a couple times, but it's finally available to listen to for non-paid subscribers. So if you want to go listen to me chatter on for another 2 hours about iPads and a separate show where it's a little more opinionated, a little bit more about me and my use cases, and I discuss nanotexture in detail, you can go listen to that, and there's a link in the show notes.
Right. You keep talking while I go listen to that. I've been looking forward to that. I like that show. Okay. So thank you. I'm glad it's finally... out. Though, wait a minute, you on an iPad show? Who would have thought? God, okay.
Yes, Tim Chatton actually runs this and the Apple Vision Pros podcast, and it's funny because I fit into both so well.
You were double value there. Okay, I like it. Perfect guest. All right.
So, speaking of iPads, did you read my iPad Pro review?
I'm afraid I did, yes. And I'm very, very sorry to say it has really tempted me to buy one. I haven't pulled the trigger yet. I'm honestly thinking about it really strongly. I said to you before many times that it's the biggest screen I miss. I used to have one of the original iPad Pros, but I don't think I need an iPad Pro. So the iPad Air was going to be the one for me. And then I thought it's a lot of money for what's probably just the bigger screen. I currently have a 2021 iPad Pro, an 11-inch one, and I felt like I'd be spending a lot of money to just get a little bit more screen, and that it wouldn't be particularly noticeably faster or anything. So once I'd seen that, and once I'd read actually our review, which says it's good but isn't great, I was reading your iPad Pro review, and I thought, this doesn't half sound like what I want. And then I looked at the prices, and then I hesitated again. So I'm a bit back and forth on this, but I'm iPad Pro.
There's a lot to discuss here, and I feel like we can dive in a little bit because there's the score to discuss. There's also the iPad Air review, which we're not going to get into that. It's an iPad Air. Andrew reviewed that for us, and he did a great job as always, but pointed out the obvious. It's the middle of the road iPad, and it lives up to its name. There's not much to really talk about there. It's basically the iPad Pro previous generation without ProMotion and few of the fancier features. So fine. But funny enough, it scored higher than the iPad Pro because of something we'll get into. But I just wanted to clarify that at the top. The iPad Air got a 4 out of 5. and the iPad Pro got a 3.5 out of 5. And I think that honestly makes sense given the markets they're targeting. If you're buying an iPad Air, you're buying it because of the price, the feature set, its potential to become, a laptop-like computer. You can still do all the modularity stuff you can with iPad Pro. We've talked about Naked Robotic Core before. iPad Air fits into that as well, just doesn't have as much oomph behind it, doesn't have as nice of a display, but it can still do all of those kind of modular things. The difference being between the two is you can get at it for $600 and accomplish everything you want to accomplish, and Apple isn't promising it will replace your Mac. So price and advertisement around it, I believe, earn it that better score, because if you're buying it to be either a companion to a Mac or maybe it's your first computer, it does that job perfectly in all of the ways it needs to, because you don't need the things that we're going to discuss that are missing from iPadOS. And so that makes it that much better of a deal versus, now we can get into iPad Pro and iPadOS. Yeah, there's a lot to discuss that's amazing about it, but iPadOS still isn't that all the way there as far as being a perfect Mac replacement for everyone. And I don't think it'll ever get to everyone, but we're going to get down to a few dozen people really can't touch it, but everyone else will be fine. We're just not there yet. And because Apple and pundits like us say, oh, iPad can replace your Mac, go get an iPad Pro, and you can spec it out to be as expensive as a 14-inch MacBook Pro, but it can't do everything that you can throw at a MacBook Pro. I think there's some disparity there that needs to be cured, and it's all about the software at this point. That's why it honestly didn't get a better score. If it was just about the hardware, it would have been a 5 out of 5.
When you say that about the iPad Air, there's a phrase here in England, an advertising phrase called "it does what it says on the tin," which is actually from some sort of gardening, whatever that stuff you put on sheds to stop them deteriorating in the winter. It comes from that, and it's just kind of become a part of the culture to say this is what it's going to do, and it does it, and that's what it sounds like for the iPad Air. But one thing in there, I don't know why I didn't expect this, but ProMotion is not on the iPad Air, and I've realised that it is on my iPad Pro, the 11-inch one. So I honestly have not seen a difference, but I think now, if I moved from one to one without it, would I really regret it? And I'm hearing as well that it affects the latency on the pencil things. So
that's one of those weird things where, like with 4K, ProMotion, honestly, even with OLED, in some cases, though I think OLED is more striking, so more noticeable. But the other two are less noticeable unless you're looking for it, like resolution. If you're going forward, you're going to look at it and say, well, this is what it's always looked like, because it's always looked good. My iPad never looked bad. But then if you go back, you'll see, oh, that's what I was missing out on. There's there's stutter in this UI that wasn't there on the 120 hertz. There's pixels that I can't see on the other device that I'm seeing here. It's just that kind of change. And that's what's weird. Like, you show someone a brand new 4K TV that you've installed in your house, upgrading from an HD one, the first thing like your wife or girlfriend's going to say is, I can't tell a difference. It's because they're looking at the TV and nothing else. Set it next to the TV it's replaced, and they'll be like, wow, that's night and day. But how many people set up a showroom in their living room to prove a point?
Okay. There's an assumption there that wife or girlfriend is not the one who bought it, and that doesn't fit a lot of wives and girlfriends I know, but I see the...
No, I mean, I just mean in my personal case. Now, of course, yes, there's going to be situations where the nerd in the family is the wife or girlfriend showing the who cares husband who's watching sports. Let's throw out all the stereotypes today, actually.
Okay. I do think when I've gone into Apple stores, I've been kind of fooled. I had to buy a TV a couple of years ago, and when I went in, so I knew going in that what I would see there would not be representative of what it would look like in my house. I mean, for one thing, the signal was terrible among all of them. The picture quality was going to be better, but also I was just fooled by it. So I almost tried to disregard the screen. I looked at the specifications. If it was better than the one I used to have, and it was in price and all this, then I bought it. But when I go into an Apple store, everything looks so good. I don't know how they do it.
And they're probably pulling a casino move and just pumping the Apple store full of oxygen to make you feel more, your euphoria as you walk into the room. And it's really bright lights. Like, it's basically like walking into heaven and you're just being met at the pearly gates with an iPhone and you're just so excited about it. Well, the iPad, so I've already discussed on the show, so we don't need to get into why I like it. The hardware is amazing. The OLED is beautiful. Nanotexture is great for my uses, of course. That's going to be opinionated. But, the hardware is as good as it can be today. If Apple did anything more to try and upgrade, if they added Wi-Fi 7, if they, I don't know, put an M4 Pro in there. I don't know what else they could have done, but like if they tried to push it any further, it would have been, the price would have been even more astronomical, or it would have been a failure because they didn't account for, thermal losses or something like that. It's as good a device as they can make today. That's why I would say the hardware is absolutely a 5 out of 5. Like, no question, when you buy a 2024 iPad Pro, whichever model, whatever upgrades you get, you're getting a near perfect device by 2024 standards. The Magic Keyboard upgrades are amazing, much needed. It makes it feel even more Mac-like in a lot of ways, and that's a compliment. That's not me saying it needs to become a Mac. It's just saying Macs are so good. I love seeing the iPad get that treatment as well. Apple Pencil Pro adds a new layer of magical interaction, making software feel physical with the way that it brings software to the surface of the page and causes haptic feedback. We've discussed all this in the show in the last couple of weeks, so
yeah, but there is one thing we haven't discussed, and I've only appreciated this. I'm having an iPad renaissance. Apple sold the new one so well that I looked at my old one and have been using it not infinitely more than I had, but I was really wasting it for a couple of years. Ever since I got my MacBook Pro, I haven't been using the iPad much, and now I love it. And the thing I really was taken with was I find it quicker to edit videos on Final Cut Pro for the iPad than I do for the MacBook Pro. I've still got to finish it off on the Mac, but the first pass assembly edit is a joy on this little iPad. And what I realize is that is what convinces me that I want a new one, the thing I would use it for. And I have never asked you, what do you actually use your iPad for? I don't know why that didn't enter my head before, but what kind of apps are you using on it that you appreciate?
Well, it makes an excellent lunch tray if you just balance everything on there just right. The apps I use, so it's actually kind of, I did mention I'm installing things only as I need them, and the list is actually getting longer and longer, funny enough. There are apps that maybe I don't use every day, but at least once a week pop up, and they're finding their way back onto my device. I installed Assassin's Creed Mirage last night and played it for a little bit to test it out a little, and it's wild playing such a high-end game on a fanless portable tablet that's running on battery power and have it run at a decent resolution with decent texture resolutions. Yes, it's going to look better on my PlayStation 5. I understand that they've downsized a lot of the packaging inside the game to allow it to run, right? Like if you had the full texture packs that are running on a PlayStation 5, this thing wouldn't even turn on, but it still looks great. We're talking PS4 era graphic levels and textures, and that's pretty amazing to me that it can pull that off and not kill the battery in 15 minutes. So a lot of power here. What am I doing with it? Work. I'm obviously I have it hooked up to an external display, keyboard, trackpad, and I have many apps running at the same time to manage different parts of my job. Primarily writing, which is obviously not that intensive of a thing, but drafts in Safari, so that stuff's always going to be a thing. But taking advantage of the iPad, photos and editing and creating images. So a lot of our job requires us to come up with images, and it's you probably don't think about it reading our website, but every image you see, we had to either get from somewhere, we had to make, it's when we try to make unique images as often as we can. That is a job in itself, and having the right tools to get that done is very important. So I'm running Photomator and Affinity Designer, usually in tandem. So Photomator, I can double the resolution of different elements I'm adding to a design project in Affinity Designer, and getting those layers together and creating composites, or I'm doing photography stuff with my real camera. Sometimes my iPhone, because the iPhone can pull off quite good shots, but sometimes I want to use my full frame camera with good lenses and all of that in my little photo studio I have, and import those through an SD card and a Thunderbolt dock connected to my iPad. And so those are getting edited in Photomator. And a lot of dust removal, stuff like that, amazing with Apple Pencil. So, and then again, like creating composite images with custom backgrounds and painting tools, all Apple Pencil. So I may not be an artist drawing with the Apple Pencil, but I'm definitely making use of it in artistic ways. There's a lot of going on with my work that requires a lot of different apps and a lot of interactions here.
Back in the day when I used to think, no, actually I still do, that you were mad preferring the iPad to the MacBook Pro. One of the driving forces for me was that I'd had quite a lot of bad experiences trying to do image editing, and particularly then uploading images from a train on an iPad and things. The amount of extra fiddling I had to do to get something to be the size I wanted and all that, I craved a MacBook.
It used to be a lot harder.
So you're finding it
used to be a lot
better.
harder.
I mean, I have an Affinity Designer, but I love Affinity Publisher. I know that app very well. Designer and Photo, they're still a bit alien to me, but you're recommending Designer.
I mean, the Affinity products are amazing. As we learned today, Adobe's doing some shady stuff with their AI training and trying to soak up everyone's projects with nasty permission boxes that won't let you uninstall the app until you accept the permission, so they can suck down as much as they can while you're trying to uninstall the app. I mean, that's all very well and good. But so like if you want an alternative to Adobe, Affinity is the first suite of apps that I point people to. But my personal preference has been has been Pixelmator and Photomator. Yeah. That company, they do an amazing job making an app that feels like it's made for me. If I could bring Pixelmator Pro to iPad, and I even bring this up in the review, I wouldn't need any other photo editor. I could create my layered projects, my composites, photo editing, all of that in one app. And I'm dying for it. I don't know why it's not on iPad, but that brings us to the greater discussion of the review, and why the review came out before WWDC, and why I decided to write it now is, I wanted to sing the praises of the hardware, and that's a lot of the review. It's an amazing device, but I have a dedicated section, I think it's almost 2,000 words just for this, of here's where iPadOS is today, a snapshot before iPadOS 18, and what the pain points we're feeling in iPad, because I love iPad. Don't let my complaints say otherwise. This is me saying it needs to be better for everyone. It doesn't need to run macOS. It doesn't need to get a dock mode that turns it into some other computer. It just needs to be iPadOS, but more. And the reason why a lot of comparisons get drawn to macOS is because it is the more full-featured system. It is the more open system. It needs to borrow from macOS's ideologies, but it doesn't need to literally clone the operating system. I think people miss that distinction when we bring up these complaints. And the last thing we want is for iPad to change. The iPad's amazing because of what it is. It just needs to be able to have the software to go with the hardware. And I think the software is currently far behind the capabilities of the hardware. Isn't
there an argument that that's not Apple, that's developers? Like you say, I love Pixelmator Pro on the Mac. I don't use Pixelmator on the iPad, so I don't really know how much it compares. But if they would just bring Pixelmator Pro to the Mac, wouldn't that make the iPad better without Apple doing anything?
So it's a mixed bag. I haven't been able to get a hold of developers to ask about this. That's a something I really need to do. But I have a feeling there's give and take here. The app probably needs more access. So, okay, let's start over. The iPad has limitations for developers from the ground up. It was built on the concept of being one app at a time on a device that ran iOS and mostly ran bigger versions of iPhone apps for a few years. We're past that now. I mean, iPadOS came out in 2019. 5 years seems like enough time to really start to hammer home that this is its own operating system, even though it's still technically iOS. If you go into Xcode and poke around it, it's basically iOS with some skinning. But it does have its own unique feature set. The problem is a lot of the foundational systems that drive iPadOS are still based on that old ideology of close down, protect the user, don't let anything happen. Things could get out of hand, things could break. What happens if something breaks on iPad? There's no task manager, right? Like, how do you handle these events? And then do we want to give people all these power usery tools to manage the system when we really just want the system to manage itself? So Apple's having this internal struggle of trying to make the iPad everything they want it to be without crossing the line from it can handle it. It's all handled for you. Don't worry about it to, well, if you need to handle it, go into this secret settings menu and handle it. And I think they're trying to avoid that. And so my point with Pixelmator Pro is I think they could get a version of the app running on iPad, but there's still limitations. Apple opened up the RAM window from like, I think for the longest time, even with iPad shipping with 8 gigs of RAM, they only allowed apps to access 6 gigs of RAM. And that got open to the full 16 gigs technically, I think 2 years ago. Not many apps have taken advantage of it, but even then, the way the processing stuff works on iPad doesn't allow that to fully work the way that developers expect. There's APIs that they can't access. There's tools they can't access. So while I expect something like a photo editor like Pixelmator Pro could work on iPad fine, it's got a lot of small things in there that they would have to optimize for touch. They'd have to account for Apple Pencil. I think it's a big job. So I know they do have something called Pixelmator on iPad Pro. Maybe they could just upgrade its functionality to bring, because all I really need to in this long rant, all I really need from Pixelmator Pro is the pixel editing part of it to be merged with the photo editing part of it. I need that functionality of being able to layer items, select specific objects, remove backgrounds, double the size, ML expand resolution functionality, like the things that you can do in Pixelmator Pro. I don't need every single function in that app. I literally only need a very small subset. Even that isn't available on iPad in the Pixelmator app. So I just want more from what we have. And at this point, it's hard to say, is it the developer's fault or Apple's fault? And I think it's a mixture of both.
But am I right that the Affinity apps have that kind of tool set?
Yes. Well, that's why I have to use them in tandem. So Affinity Designer, I can create a transparent canvas of a certain resolution and start dumping objects into it and arranging it. So like there's a word like a graphics editor, I guess, a pixel editor. Whereas in Photomator is where I can do color saturation. I can even do layering, say select the background, select the foreground, but those tools are kind of hit and miss in that app. But I still can't drop objects in. And so if Photomator let me add transparent layers and objects and arrange them, it would be almost there. And that's what's so frustrating about this is it feels so close already. Why not take the last couple of steps to just bring the whole thing to iPad? But yeah, so Photomator specifically, I use, yes, it's a good photo editor, and it's one of my preferred ones. I also like Darkroom for certain things. But if I want to remove things with the repair tool, because their repair tool is excellent, that's great with Apple Pencil. But the ML super resolution and a couple of other tools, denoising tools that they have built into it, is indispensable. So I sometimes start in Photomator and take it to Designer, get everything to where it needs to be, export it as a JPEG, take it back to Photomator,
right,
and then edit out a few odds and ends. Like, for example, if I want to blur an object or use the what's the tool? I use the tools. I don't know any other names. If I want to use the blend tool to hide the fact that I added two layers together in Designer and try to get the colors to match more evenly, rather than have it be a jarring line between two backgrounds. It's so hard to get right. Like, for whatever reason, their blurring algorithm just can't handle it, and I end up with just this like smudged line that looks like a mess. So if I just take that finished image, get as close as I can to done, export it, take it to Photomator, and use the repair tool, it'll just make that line disappear. It feels like both of them are so close. If Designer could give me the proper repair tool, or Affinity could give me the layering tool, or Photomator can give me the layering tool, I could just go with either one. But right now I need both, and that's what's so odd about it.
This episode is brought to you by Notion. Notion is one app and one service that combines all of your notes, docs, and projects into one single space that is simple and beautifully designed. And it's this idea of one space that's key. Notion is so expansive and capable that you can do everything in it, which means you have one tool, one place to go to do all you need. Now, there's no shortage of helpful AI tools out there, but using them typically means switching back and forth between yet another set of digital tools. So actually, instead of simplifying your workflow, that just becomes more complicated. Unless, of course, you're in Notion. And the fully integrated Notion AI helps you work faster, write better, and think bigger, doing tasks that normally take you hours in just seconds. Right there in your work, you can ask Notion to search your projects. Yeah, you can set up automation so that you concentrate on the work you want to do while Notion does the organizing that you used to have to do. Try Notion for free when you go to notion.com/AppleInsider. This is important. That's all lowercase letters. Notion.com/AppleInsider to try the powerful, easy to use Notion AI today. And when you use our link, you're supporting our show. Notion.com/AppleInsider. And thanks to Notion for its support of the Apple Insider podcast. It seems to me that all the tools you want are on iPad. They're just in different apps. And that makes me think I'm sure it's more complicated than that, but it feels like, therefore, it's a developer thing, and iPadOS is just doing its thing in the background and being blamed unfairly.
Well, so this is where it gets complicated. So, okay, on top the Photomator, Pixelmator Pro is a bad example, because I do honestly believe they can get it at least 90% of the way there, if not all the way there, on iPad, because it's an M series chip. It can run it. It's a photo editing application. It's not taking advantage of any secret APIs that I know of. So, I think that one is an example of one that could run on iPad. But there are so many things that can't run on iPad that you get the baby version of the app or something. Like, that's what I'm tired of. I'm tired of, we have an iPad version. No, just give us the version. Give us the app, right? And make it friendly for touch. Sure, make it for iPadOS. I don't want one of these web view things that everyone's making these days. Make a native iPad app, but don't make it, an iPad, a mobile app, right? Like, that's the distinction here. That I run into a lot with iPadOS is that one is the developer problem, is they feel the need to have a stripped down version on iPad. But part of that, like I said, I can't lay all the blame at developers' feet, because part of that is Apple artificially restricting parts of the system in the name of security and privacy.
So we were going to talk about things we actually expect to see in WWDC. iPadOS improvements, yes, but it sounds like a key improvement would be something kind of behind the scenes, like removing the RAM limitation. That doesn't feel like something Apple will talk about in the kind of very public-facing keynote, but it might bury somewhere in the state of the platform.
Sure. And it doesn't have to be announced on stage, but this is the kind of stuff when they change frameworks and underlying systems at WWDC, and it doesn't even get mentioned. That's more of a State of the Union thing. That's more of a just documentation thing. That's all fine as long as it happens. But to get to the wider range of issues, because we focus too much on my pet peeve of Photomator, but you can't control audio intents on iPad. I have to own a Mac right now. I would own one anyway for work because I need to be able to screenshot macOS for certain articles. I need to understand macOS. I can't just abandon that. Like, that is part of my job. But as far as using it, I would love it if it was just I'm going to go open this and take a screenshot kind of device. But I need it to record this podcast. We've done it before on iPad. William, early days, the first podcast I ever recorded with you, we made a phone call with each other over my iPhone, over Skype, and then I recorded the local audio using, I think, Ferrite on the iPad Pro. And it's still the same way. That was in 2021, and that is still the only way to record a podcast remotely on iPad without paying $1 million for some app that does it for you. But there's no reason for that to be the problem. Game streaming. You can now connect a game console to the iPad, have it stream the picture through an HDMI capture box to the iPad. I can have the forward-facing camera on the studio display connected through the iPad through a Thunderbolt dock, record my image, remove the background, and have me transparently floating over a video game feed. I can have that stream to Twitch. All of that works. But I cannot have the game audio and the microphone audio going at the same time without reprogramming the streaming box with a Mac, by the way, to tell it to mix the audio in software a certain way and then plug it back into the iPad. Just, once again, why does a Mac need to be involved in that, and why can't I control the audio? And it's such a weird limitation.
And why do you want to... Do you often film yourself floating in the air playing a game? Is this a thing?
It's not something I do. It was an experiment. I wanted to see if it was possible, and I was able to prove it was possible with some annoyances. I've discussed this actually on the iPad Pros podcast before. The first episode I was on, that was the topic of discussion, is that setup and how I got it working. And it's interesting, and I'm not against the idea if I ever could get it to be less headachy to just pop onto a stream and play Minecraft and talk to people about Apple. That would be fun for me. I'd be okay with that. It's still just annoying enough that I haven't gotten to the habit of doing it. I fully intended on trying to start a little Twitch channel, and I'm not going to make any money or anything. I just wanted to just fool around and have something more going on than me just playing a video game. I'd be able to talk to people and stuff. And that would have been interesting. It's just, it fell away because there's enough hoops to jump through that it became, I don't want to do it right now. We'll see what Apple does with iPadOS 18. But there's even more, William. So some of your favorite tools on Mac can't exist on iPad. You love your text expander.
Oh, yes,
there's clipboard management.
You can't, Alfred, Raycast, Launchbar.
Yeah. System level tools are not allowed on iPad. I cannot run a clipboard manager on my iPad, not without it being in the foreground constantly. I would have to copy something, open the Paste app, leave the Paste app, paste it, go back to the that's the only way the app would update with my clipboard, is to visit the app every time, or have some weird broken trick where it's doing a screen recording so it can run in the foreground or something. It's not good.
That's interesting that I forgot that, considering I am so life support dependent on keyboard shortcuts through Keyboard Maestro. That'll never get onto an iPad either. I have so many automations that I really depend on them. When I go to someone else's Mac, I feel like their Mac is broken. And yet when I go to an iPad, it's like I know it's not going to be there, so I don't expect it. Yeah. I've been trained. And
honestly...
Yeah. Okay.
I mean, I work fine from iPad. I get everything I need to done for the most part. There are a couple of little hoops that I have to jump through, some workarounds in place, but I love working from iPad. So all I want is Apple to make it less hoop jumpy, less weird. Just make it take advantage of those capabilities. The M4 processor is the fastest single core processor in a consumer product in an iPad. and you can't run a clipboard manager. Like, it just feels like these odd things are just legacy decisions that they've forgotten to fix as the iPad matures. And let's hope that iPadOS 18, with all this AI nonsense, can help push it forward, because maybe they have to open up the system for other things than they just accidentally enable a couple of features. That's what happened with the game streaming one. They enabled external webcam support, but they just also so happened to enable iPad to become a streaming tool.
I didn't realize.
It seems to be the path Apple's taking with iPad is accidentally giving power users what they want because they have another targeted feature they're trying to release. But I don't want to be too negative on iPad. Again, like, those complaints, there's more in the review. Please go read it. Let me know on Mastodon what you think. Tell me some things that we haven't mentioned. What can you not do? Of course, I can already hear you. Yes, you can't do web development. You can't do coding. The file system doesn't allow certain things, so there's just certain things you just cannot do because of the file system. I already know those, but you can tell me anyway. I'm just saying I'm fully aware. But I just feel like, no, iPad doesn't need to be a Mac. It doesn't need to be more complicated. It just needs to be improved in ways that allow us to have more flexibility, but in that Apple way that still gives us privacy and security. They're fully capable of doing it. I trust that they can. So
there is something,
put a pin
though
in this wish list and hope that they fix it by WWDC. But go ahead.
There's an important iPad thing that, yet again, I've never asked you about. And it came out in an interview in the last few weeks with, I'm afraid I can't remember the name of it. I think it's a German magazine. I'll find a link for it. An interview with various designers from Apple, and it included why is the Apple logo the way round it is on an iPad. And the article wants us to think that Apple are considering changing it. And you read the quotes, and even in translation, you can feel the designers going, yeah, we could. So they're not going to do it. But it comes down to which way around do you hold your iPad? And I think because of things like the camera position changes and stuff, Apple thinks we have it in landscape like a laptop, whereas I love reading scripts and things in portrait on my iPad. Are you a portrait or a landscape kind of guy?
Depends on what I'm doing. Of course, it's most of the time it's in a Magic Keyboard or a stand, holder, case, what have you, but those are going to make it landscape. But if it's in my hand, there's a good chance it'll be portrait. I don't think the logo should change orientation because when it's in those stands and cases, the logo's obscured. You can't see that it's sideways. And the logo on the Magic Keyboard is the right facing direction. So I think the logo's fine as it is.
Earlier today on Twitter, I don't know what I was looking for, but I came across somebody who posted a photograph from Friends of Matthew Perry's Chandler with an old power book. It was really nice to see this old power book. And they were saying, why is the Apple logo upside down? And I can't remember when Apple flipped it, but it was so obviously the right choice when they did. But there to think there's people out there who don't know the history of the Apple logo on the backs of... I blame the education system, really. That's going to be okay.
So you want the backlit logo on the iPads?
I'm not honestly fussed because I'm never looking at that bit. There's an artist here called Midge Ure who's I particularly like his music. I saw him in concert recently, and he's a very heavy Apple user. But on set, he actually has two MacBook Pros controlling something, and I know he hasn't updated them in a very, very long time because the Apple logos shine out from it. And I'm starting to worry about the man's income. Is he all right with all of this sort of stuff?
So let's close up the iPad because I think we've it's so annoying because we could literally spend 2 podcasts on this review.
Well,
I really tried to go into a lot of detail here.
I do ask you the detail because I really, really am. I want to be in the market for it. I'm very conscious the Apple Pro is very expensive for it and for what I need. And I'm trying to be sensible, but I've come so close after talking to you. So basically, thanks a bunch there. Yeah, really.
I'll give a little inside baseball here. So if people wondering about the score, just to bring it full circle. Yes. So Google rules the internet, right? And one of the things that they want for reviews, they pretty much require it, is a numerical score to attach to the search result. If you don't have one, you won't be treated as a review in Google search. So that's why if anyone's ever wondered about that, everyone has a numerical score, whether it's a 5-point scale or a 100-point scale. They have to do it because Google will just basically ignore it as a review. They'll treat it as like a news piece or something without a review score. So we're kind of put in this place. We don't want a 100-point system because it's too that would require too much decision making. I don't want to say it's a 74 out of 100. That's stupid. I don't think it actually says anything. Read the review. Read the words that I said on the page. Don't look at the score and think that that's what that means. Honestly, a 3.5 is actually, by our scale, is saying it's above average but needs work. And I think that fits for iPad. The hardware is astronomical, but the iPadOS holds it back enough that it literally pulls it down from a 5 to a 3.5. And that's where I land. But don't get lost in the bluntness of a 5-point score system. I think it makes sense that the iPad Pro would score technically lower because iPad Pro, if you price it to the 1 terabyte model, you're in MacBook Pro territory. And right now, if someone asked me, do I buy an iPad or a Mac? The problem with that discussion is if I knew nothing about the person, the only thing I could say, you will never run into something you cannot do on a MacBook, because as long as you have the power to do it, as long as you have the RAM and the CPU, right? As long as you have it spec to the thing you need to do, you will never run into a thing on the MacBook you can't do, except for maybe use an Apple Pencil or detach the display, right? Obviously, there's hardware considerations here, but pure software, you will never run into a limitation that you just cannot get done as long as you spec it correctly. The problem with iPad is we have to have an in-depth discussion of, will you ever use this in a way that you will run into a wall and can't surmount, and then suddenly you're like, man, I need a Mac. Let me run to Best Buy, buy another $2,000 computer, hook it up, do the one thing I needed to do, and then go back to my iPad. Because that, for the consumer, is just, you can't do it. And that's the only thing holding it back from being a full Mac replacement. I do believe, and I've written these articles before, go read my Mac replace Mac with an iPad article. There are many, many people on this planet that can just use an iPad and never need a Mac. Absolutely. I'm honestly north of 70-80% of regular computer users, because all they're going to do is write text, read words, watch videos. That's fine. But once you get into those niche categories, once you get into podcasting, once you get into streaming, once you get into coding, there's just certain things that you'll need a Mac for. And the more of those things Apple can eliminate from that list, the better the iPad is as a purchase for people. And I think it's the more futuristic device. I think it's the better device overall. It's missing that little bit of overhead, that last 20%. And that's why you have to get into so much detail when someone asks that question of, well, what are you going to do with it? Because you can't confidently say, oh, you'll do everything you need to with it fine, because you'll never know when they'll run into that one thing. And that's the problem we're having today.
You did miss a trick there, though. Someone comes to you and says, should I buy an iPad or should I buy a Mac? You surely should say, buy an Apple Vision Pro. I mean, come on.
Of course. I think Vision Pro falls into the iPad category in this discussion. You know, you have to basically ask them to write a 1,000-word essay on what they intend to use their computer for, and just to make sure. But we really need to dive into WWDC.
Yeah.
Like I said, there's a whole 2-hour discussion, and funny enough, different from the one we had here, because there's so much to say about the iPad and iPad Pro on iPad Pro's podcast. If you want to hear me say more about it, go there, read my review. Please reach out. I'm always happy to explain my views, but I have a pretty firm grip on what's going on in iPad land, and I'm excited and hopeful that Apple will address some of these little nuanced things that we'd like to see changed and upgraded. But speaking of things that are going to change, WWDC. So we have 6 operating systems now that we have to keep an eye on.
Goodness, is it 6? Apple, Mac, iPhone, TV, Watch. Oh, yes, and Vision Pro. God, it is 6 already. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Okay, that's... I remember the simple days when Steve Jobs came back and just said that 4x4 grid. This is all we're doing. And he posited that it was the idea, and what he meant was this is all we can afford, really. And, somewhere between the two. But I liked the logic of it, and now, I don't know.
It's lucky that Tim Cook did that interview with Charlie Rose on such a large table, because I think it's still true today that they can fit everything on that table that they sell, but it was a very big table, William.
Okay. I'd forgotten that one. Oh, we should try to find the video for that. Can't promise that one, but I will look for it, because that would be fun to watch again. Does it include all the cables?
That's the interview where Tim Cook said the wrist is very interesting, if I remember correctly. If I'm not mixing up my interviews, he did say it a lot, but I believe that was one of the main interviews where he was asked about a watch of some kind, and he said, "I think the wrist is very interesting." I believe that was the Charlie Rose interview.
What a Tim Cook kind of phrase there. Answering it and not answering it. He is very clever with what he says, I think. But, okay, right. On Monday, he's not going to be clever at all, is he? On Monday, he's going to be straight out with it. He's going to tell us, this is the best Mac OS we've ever done. It's the best iOS we've ever done.
Of course. We made tvOS worse, guys, sorry. But this is the best watch OS that we've ever done.
I like tvOS. I just wish the YouTube app wouldn't crash out on me all the time. Every now and again, well, quite often, it won't allow you to scroll until you come out and you go back in again, and then magically it works again. It doesn't feel like it's a hard fix, but
that's a Google problem. They've really broken that app for some reason, and I don't understand. Well, we do understand part of it. They were trying to get advertisements to play when you stop viewing something, so the screensaver wouldn't start, and bring in more ad revenue, which is very nasty. Stop it, Google.
Well, no, you've got to think about their future and their bottom line.
Yeah, they're really struggling over there.
I think so. Yes, I like to do my bit to help, but okay.
I do think. So people are worried that Apple's going to go out on stage and say AI 137 times. They will, but also this is still going to be an operating system update. We're still going to get those silly little things throughout all the systems that are quality of life improvements. They're going to rearrange the settings app. They're going to, give us a new random app. They're going to bring Journal to iPad. All of that stuff is still going to happen. There's just going to be this shadow of AI over everything. So while we get our usual upgrades and our expected changes, and macOS is going to get another thing that makes it look like an iPhone, and all of that stuff's going to happen, we're just going to keep hearing about, by the way, this updated UI also gets an AI feature. And that's just going to kind of be sprinkled throughout WWDC. I don't think it's a bad thing, because I have enough confidence in Apple that they're going to be doing AI in a respectful and useful way, and not literally throwing it at the wall to see if the spaghetti's cooked kind of way. So we'll see. What do you think, William? Are they going to just pour it out on the ground and see what happens, or are they going to be more thoughtful with this AI stuff? I
don't think they're going to make a big deal of the partnership with OpenAI, assuming that that's correct. I think they're going to talk about what it gives the users for it. It will always, even though this is developer conference, the keynote speak is for everybody watching. So it will be for users what we do.
The OpenAI, Google Gemini, possibly Adobe, whoever they partner with, because all we know about the contract getting closed is OpenAI, but there were other things going on. So Apple could have a full app store of AI tools that people can choose from to implement at the system level. Great. That'll be a segment of the keynote and probably sprinkled throughout briefly. But yeah, they're not going to have Sam Altman come out and say, that we're now Apple or whatever, have the Bill Gates moment with Steve Jobs kind of thing. But I think it's going to be more of that's going to be a feature, and it's going to be in the system. The AI I'm talking about, the sprinkling throughout everything, is Apple AI. The on-device models that they've been working on, these Ajax, Gray Matter, Black Parrot, all these code names that we keep uncovering at AppleInsider, that is the system we're going to be learning about throughout the event. And yes, there's going to be server-side details, but all the server-side stuff, Apple's just going to say, and we'll hand that off to, ChatGPT or whatever LLM you've trusted in the system at the point when it needs to happen. But otherwise, it's all on device and it's all private and it's all secure. I think that's going to be the focus.
This episode is brought to you by ExpressVPN. I switched to ExpressVPN a few weeks ago now, and it's been on ever since. Because while actually all VPNs I've tried before have noticeably slowed down my internet, ExpressVPN, I mean, clues in the name, did not. So I had no reason to even notice it was still on, except for how I could access sites usually blocked to me here in the UK, and except for how I was able to forget any worries about security and just browse, whether that was for fun or for work, just all the time knowing every bit of it was private. You know, the way the internet used to be, the way browsing used to be, private. Today, though, there are hundreds of data brokers out there, and their entire business is always built on buying and on selling your data. It doesn't matter if you're in some high security job dealing with confidential information. Well, actually, it does matter. There you really, truly must get a VPN then. But even the shopping you did on Amazon last week, the medication you ordered from your local pharmacy online on Tuesday, it sounds like nothing, but it paints a really detailed picture of you and of where you are that can be used at the very, very least to target advertising at you, at the very least. Much of it comes down to your IP address. That's the way that data harvesters know that you are the same person who checks movie theatre times every Friday afternoon at about 3 o'clock. But with ExpressVPN, they don't get to see this IP address of yours. They only get to see a random one created by ExpressVPN and shared only by the company with its users. Turn on ExpressVPN on your Mac, your iPhone, your iPad, or even on smart TVs, and you are immediately protected. So visit expressvpn.com/AI podcast and get yourself 3 extra months for free. That's Express as in fast, EXPRESS, VPN as in virtual private network, or VPN, and /AI podcast for AppleInsider podcast. Go to expressvpn.com/AI podcast to learn more. And thanks to ExpressVPN for supporting the Apple Insider podcast. Is there you're right about Apple Insider and covering all sorts of things, but I'm not trying to avoid it. There's a bit of me that still wants to look forward to the show and the reveal, but I know there are improvements coming to things like mail. Failure of imagination here. I can't really see what AI would bring me in mail. I mean, there are things I would like mail to have, but...
Okay. So, have you ever seen the movie Her?
No. I know the one you mean, but I haven't
This is
seen it, no.
This is an annoying analogy because Sam Altman made that analogy with Scarlett Johansson and is probably going to get a lawsuit over it. I don't mean to be that guy. That's not what I'm saying. There's a scene in the movie. I don't think Apple's building Her. That would be artificial intelligence isn't intelligent. I'll just start off by saying that. But there's a scene in the movie where he installs this brand new AI companion on his computer, and she's just like, "Oh, let me organize your mail for you. You have all these unread messages. All this looks like trash. You don't need to read. I'm just going to get rid of that. Let me organize your file system in a way that you can find things." Right? Like, as silly as that scene is, it's actually kind of, and it was like 2013, so it's just kind of funny that even at that time we were kind of thinking about this rudimentary way that a computer might be able to improve our lives. We're only just getting to that point where the technology can do that for us. It's not sentient. It can't be. Go read about how this technology works, guys. It cannot become sentient. It is not a thinking computer. But what it can do is understand things that a computer generally cannot because of how much data it has access to, and do things like organize your email in a way that's human readable. It can do things like get rid of all the junk that you literally don't need. Like, sure, there's been filters before, but those were filters. They're blunt instruments where you say, if it has the word "add" in it, throw it in the trash. No, this is actually going to say, you need this or you don't, based on my understanding of you as a person, based on this training model that I've been built on. And that, I think, is interesting.
I did like it when Apple introduced that thing of when you go to move a message, that it offers where it's going to put it for you because you moved the last one that was like it there. I thought it was clever. And I know it's actually, my wife Angela was really quite annoyed when she moved iPhones, and for a little bit till everything was kind of sorting itself out, that was gone and she really missed it. So that's the kind of small extra. I'd actually forgotten that. But yes, okay, I can see me relying on it.
There's an app called Edison Mail that was kind of controversial because they had a lot of permissions people didn't quite understand, so they were worried about privacy things, and that those concerns are probably still there. I don't use the app myself anymore. I experimented with it. I want that feature in Mail of what they have, where they have all these smart destinations for newsletters, marketing, receipts, bills, and it just did such a good job of sorting all of that out, surfacing links to the top of the email instead of, go here to pay this bill, and it would just be at the top of the email. Stuff like that. Like, that is cool. Being able to get an email conversation and have it summarize everything you've discussed so far. What was I supposed to do with this? What did we, what email did we say had the, so for example, Inside Baseball here, I review a lot of stuff, and maybe I discussed the specs of a bike that I got, and I can't remember what wattage the motor of the e-bike they sold me, because honestly, I can't tell when I'm riding it. It's a bike. It doesn't say it in a notable place on the external of the bike, and I don't know. How do I figure this out quickly without having to get a flashlight, crawl underneath the motor, and find a wattage rating on there? And you go through every email you've ever read and ever sent, trying to do text-related searches, trying to find where this information might be, and it's buried 30 emails into a text in a thread of emails in a PDF that they sent you of a spec sheet of the bike that you're going to review, and you have to painstakingly dig this out. Versus maybe you can just say, "Hey, find a PDF or a document that I was sent from this sender." That kind of works, by the way, already. So I already hear people typing. It's hard to think of examples these days that don't already work in some way. You can search for attachments by sender. Yes, I get it. But how do you know it was in an attachment, right? That's what I'm saying. Unburden some of that useless information in your brain and let your computer think for you. That's kind of the idea.
Last Saturday, somebody was showing me a photograph on their phone of a painting. A Bob Dylan painting that they'd seen, and it took them ages to scroll through their Android phone to find it, and we got it talking about things we put on our walls, and I don't put very much on, but I do have an A1 sized version of the symbol for time from Arrival. It's in my living room, and I wanted to show her this, and I could not find it through the thousands of photographs. But also on that wall I have also A1, the final page of a script to a show called Fortunes of War by Alan Plater, based on Olivia Manning's amazing books. And I knew that one of the characters on that page was called Harriet. So I just searched Harriet in photos, and instantly it found the photograph of the two posters on my wall. And I thought that was pretty close to magical there. So I'm happy already.
Yeah, the photo searches, this is what's interesting, is there's so many tools across Apple's operating system that's machine learning based, that's already really powerful. You can search for all the pets, you can say a specific animal or even a location, and it'll find stuff like that. That's only going to get better because the way these algorithms work, these AI models work, are so much more advanced than just a basic yes-no tree ML model. And that's where we're going to see some interesting things happen. But let's close out this segment, because I know we didn't get anything too specific about WWDC because there's so much to talk about. Go read our preview of WWDC. We've been talking about all these potential features for months. We just wanted to give it the broad strokes in today's show because we don't need to break down what we've already talked about. I'm sure you guys are all already caught up on exactly what might be coming. But I do want to say, I think the reactions to Apple's WWDC, just on a broad spectrum, are going to be negative because Apple is going to be conservative here. They're not going to come out swinging. They're not going to, have a confetti cannon go off and say, look, we have AI now. Look how amazing we are. And it can solve all of your human problems. You dumb, terrible human. How dare you need our help? Which is what Google usually does. Their advertising campaign kills me because it's literally let Google do it for you, you dumb human. That put that in quotes. That's what they say. And, I feel like Apple's going to have just such a more nuanced approach. Yes, they're going to use the term AI. Absolutely. I don't think we can get away from that now unless they come out and try to jokingly say it's Apple Intelligence or something like that. But they're going to call it AI. They're going to say it on stage. But it's going to be, we're going to make contacts better. We're going to find dates and calendar better. It's going to be helpful to day-to-day tasks. The people who deal with this stuff every day are going to be like, wow, that is a godsend. I can't believe they're doing that. This is amazing. And everyone else is going to be like, well, that's stupid. They just basically gave us a better phone book, right? That's how this keynote's going to go. The people who know about these tools, about these nuanced situations, being able to build a Siri shortcut by describing it with your voice, what you want to happen, and have it output something, will only be magical to the people who spent dozens of hours building 500 Siri's shortcuts, right? Like, I get it. Some of this stuff might come off as boring or behind, and we'll be discussing this in depth next week or in the next show that I make it to. We'll see what happens, but we're going to get into it. I promise you, whatever you hear on stage, it's probably not quite what you think it is. There's going to be a lot more detail here. It's just Apple's not going to come out swinging like Google does and say, we're changing your life and replacing jobs. And I don't know, you don't need script writers anymore and you don't need photo editors anymore. And it's all doing it for you. That's not the tone they're going to take. And I think people, at least investors, the usual pundits are going to be like, well, time to give up on Apple. Let's downsize their stock kind of reaction. We'll see.
I have actually been considering investing in Apple. I've never invested in anything. And I thought, why not buy one share? And while I was thinking about it, Apple was in the doldrums. And then by the time I got around to doing anything about it, it was not in the doldrums. I am counting on the share price going down on Monday night so I can just get in, buy something before it goes back up again on Tuesday.
Yeah, it's actually the best pattern in the world. You don't need CNBC for this. This is actually guaranteed to happen. Every Apple event, the stock will spike like the week before, and then the day of the event, it's going to just drop lower than it's ever been in like 6 months. And then within a week, it's going to recover and shoot past that again because that's, for whatever reason, investors hate Apple events. They do. Just yesterday, Apple hit their $3 trillion valuation again, and Nvidia actually hit $3 trillion as well, kind of stealing the spotlight, and Microsoft's still ahead of them a little bit. So the top three companies, Microsoft, Apple, Nvidia, wild in 2024. That's who they are. I wouldn't have picked Nvidia a decade ago.
No.
Their trajectory is maddening, but that's the AI thing we're talking about. Nvidia's chips are powering these servers and these computers. Microsoft Copilot Plus PCs, terrible name.
Yes.
But we're seeing a lot of this stuff happen in the scenes. I'm just saying, temper your expectations, use common sense and critical thinking, see what you're excited about, and ignore the noise, because I think iOS 18, iPadOS 18, there's going to be a lot of good there, a lot of useful features, and nobody cares about the AI tools, but what they do care about is being able to place your icons anywhere on the home screen and change its color freely. So we'll see what WWDC looks like, and we'll get into a little bit more of our wish lists in the Apple Insider Plus segment.
This does seem like an appropriate point to say, as interesting as WWDC is, as exciting, I think iOS 18 and all this is going to be, don't update to it on Monday evening.
Right.
Let it go through the beta process. That's what it's there for. And I say that even though last year and the year before I accidentally tripped over and did it anyway. But I was lucky there.
I will be installing everything, Vision OS included, the minute it is available to the developers.
What did I just say moments ago? Don't do it.
you're talking to the audience. I'm separate from this. Look, do not do what I'm doing. All right, I'm doing it for my job. I'm doing it for my curiosity. I would do it anyway if it wasn't my job, to be fair. But don't do what I'm doing because it could be catastrophic. I might come back and tell you guys about how my Vision Pro caught on fire because I installed Vision OS 2. It's not a human AI pen, so I don't think that's going to be an issue.
Okay, I was just thinking yes. But basically, when you brick your iPad Pro, you'll just send it to me, won't you?
Of course. Right. Yeah. Free to fix.
Yeah, it might take a while, but yes. Okay.
Just speaking to the betas, I wonder what we're going to get during the summer because, okay, a lot of this stuff, will it even be there? Will we be able to test anything AI related this summer? It kind of feels like you don't need it there. Like this is all consumer focused. Developers don't need the tools; they need the APIs so they can build their apps. So that stuff will be there for developers to test. But for the consumer side, for me, I'm not building an app, and I install this on my devices. What am I going to see on Monday night that's actually new and different, other than maybe the journal app on iPad? Let's cross our fingers. But I'm just saying, like, are the models going to be there? The local ones might be. I can almost guarantee you won't be able to call out to OpenAI at all during the beta period. But how many of the local ones will actually be there? What new functionality that they announced at WWDC will actually be in these betas? Because this could be a very exciting event followed by a very muted beta cycle because all of the tools are API related and developers have to work on it, and the actual OSs being tested get almost nothing. So we'll see what that looks like. Honestly, I might hold back for like 30 minutes to see what people say, because if they install iOS 18 and it does nothing, then what's the point of getting all that bugginess? So I would definitely, even people like me that are listening, maybe hold back for 10 minutes. Just find out what's actually on this system, because these AI things might be a bit tricky, and Apple might be holding back on some of those features for beta 1. So
I was having such a lovely time.
We'll see.
I was looking forward to all of this. But no, you got to tell me I'll be disappointed at the keynote, and it won't be there, and it won't work till later. Basically, what's the point tuning in? No.
Well, we talk about this every year. Go back and listen to last year's pre-WWDC show. Everyone puts every wish that they ever had, including resurrecting their grandmother, into WWDC. Apple's going to do it all, and then they can't. There's just no way to satisfy everyone's demands, because there's just no way to do all of that in a single year, in a single update in the first place. So there's always going to be someone disappointed. It's just, I think people wish casting with AI is even more inflated than the normal wish casting, because they expect Apple to change the game and get ahead, or like they'll prove Google Gemini wrong, or I don't know what they expect, but it's not that, people, because I think there's just a general misunderstanding about what this technology actually is, and it's not this thinking computer that's not going to open the pod bay doors. So we'll see.
There is a thing though I think you're missing here. Just I know we need to get on to AppleInsider Plus, but just quickly, I don't need Apple to please everybody. I just need them to please me. Then that'd be fine.
Oh, fair.
I'll be all right with that.
Did they phone you and make sure that they've got the keynote ready for you then, William?
I keep ringing, and I will get through one day. I told somebody about Blue once before they hung up, but yeah.
Oh, there you go. Just a teaser for the Plus segment, William. If you can tint your icons, you're going to be tinting them blue, of course, yes?
Actually, no. I'm a purist for software. No. It's blue hardware. Come on. There's a clear distinction here. Really. I would have
man of principle.
I would have thought that was obvious, wouldn't it?
Okay. Well, show's over. I don't understand William at all, actually.
Okay, I like that.
No, anyway, also, last, on the way out here, Vision Pro might get a global launch. They might sneak that in there somewhere, but this is a jam-packed event. I'm still kind of expecting maybe like a little pamphlet release at like 9 a.m. on Monday to say Vision Pro available globally. Okay, now let's get to the keynote, right? Like, we'll see what they do there, because Vision OS 2 I think is what they were waiting on. But if they're waiting on Vision OS 2, then that means they wouldn't release till the fall. So people waiting overseas, maybe, William, I wouldn't get our hopes up too much about a global Vision Pro launch during the event, but it's definitely edging ever closer. But on that note, before William can be sad into the microphone, I will say thanks for listening.
It's Apple Card all over again.
Of course. You'll get Vision Pro before Apple Card, don't worry, because you'll probably
yes,
never
I think
Apple
so.
Card.
Yes. Okay.
To
ruin it
emphasize
for me.
Apple Card, the card that goes in the wallet. Enunciating on a vocal podcast about car versus card, especially with my accent, doesn't work. Anyway, thanks for listening to the podcast, everyone. You can find me on Mastodon. That's where I'm most active. You can email me from the link at the top of every article I've written. There's a little email button there. Please reach out. Let me know what you thought of the show. Let me know what you think of the review of iPad Pro's episode that I'm on. Any of that, just, reach out to me. You can always talk to William as well about all of his Blue needs. And William, where can people find you?
Well, I'd like people to not find me for about an hour, 2 hours, because right after this, I'm going to listen to that iPad Pro's episode. But after that, email is always the best. William@AppleInsider.com. And I've been getting some really nice emails recently. Thank you. I do enjoy that.
Yeah, I've gotten a few good ones myself. Yeah, there are some nice people on the internet. Now, I will say, I've noticed our podcast review score is still around 4.3. I think our listeners they're better than that. Guys, if you haven't listened or reviewed the podcast, or at least haven't updated your score recently, go give that a poke. Let's get a bunch of, lovely 5-star reviews. And of course, if you hate us, go and tell us how much you hate us. That's fine. Hate listening to podcasts is a thing, I guess people do. But yeah, go give us a review. Tell us what you think on the Apple podcast app, or, whatever app of choice. I know Overcast lets you do little stars for every episode that you enjoy. So that always helps. We like to see what you guys say in those review sections. It's a lot of fun. I actually do enjoy reading some of the bad reviews, because they are they're just entertaining for me to see anyway. I do try to take the constructive criticism, but some of them are just outright mean, and I get a chuckle out of them.
Oh, you make me want to go read them now, but okay. Anyway, no.
Hey, that's how you got to be on the internet. You can't take you got to take the good with the bad, and there's a lot of bad on the internet, and people like to say mean things. So don't worry, guys. It doesn't really affect me. I've been told by enough people that they enjoy listening to the show that I'm doing a good job. So maybe that's inflated my ego. I don't know, but maybe I need a few more people to tell me how terrible I am. We'll balance it out anyway. But please give us a review on the Apple Podcast app, and that's always fun to go check out. We haven't got one in a couple of weeks, so I'd like to see some there.
I don't feel that I can go and give a review, but I do want to say I do particularly enjoy it when you're the main presenter and I get to ask you all these questions, because it's like you are my source for the Apple Vision Pro and the iPad. And recently I've been getting iPad mad. So thank you very much.
Oh, yes, of course. Well, so I'd like to say thank you to our sponsors, Notion and Fastmail. We'll see you guys soon on the Apple Insider Plus segment if you are a paid subscriber. Otherwise, we will talk to you guys next week.